I woke up from my dream in a sweat. Once I came to, I quickly recovered from my fake ecstasy and thought to myself, damn, it doesn't have to be Kate Upton. Right now I'd settle for any decent woman. It had been a long time since my wife had left. I was still very confused, dazed, and angry, not in the right frame of mind to find a suitable sexual partner. Many of my ex-wife's friends seemed eager to comfort me, but I thought it was creepy. Whenever I looked at them, most of them were married. I saw her. Plus, having just destroyed my marriage, I didn't want to do that to anyone else I knew. In reality, these were all just excuses. None of them turned me on. Whenever my mind wasn't fully occupied, I asked myself the same questions over and over again. What made her fall out of love with me? All of her friends thought I was beautiful, and in fact, I was prettier than she was. I'm the same weight I was when I graduated from college over 30 years ago, with almost the same muscle tone. I have all my hair, I'm rich, and I thought I was paying attention to her, and I certainly never missed a birthday, anniversary, or any other special occasion. She seemed to have an orgasm almost every time we had sex, and I did my best to give her pleasure in addition to regular sex. My 2 adult children were supportive, but unfortunately it didn't help much. I don't know if they were just being kind or honest when they said they were as clueless about their mom's motivation for the divorce as I was. However, in several family meetings after the breakup, they seemed to be more distant from their mom than they had been in the past. Anyway, just as my questions went unanswered for the 100th time, I noticed a car in distress on the side of the road a few kilometers from my lake house. There appeared to be a mother and 2 small children. I pulled over to help. "Hi, my name is Rob, what's up?" I said as I approached the stopped car. My mom turned to face me, she had tears in her eyes. Unconsciously, I appraised her, and then told myself off for considering the young mother as a potential sexual partner. She was probably 175, 180 centimeters tall, with curly blonde hair and too much makeup. She was probably about 25 years younger than me, dressed in cropped jeans, sandals, and a strappy top. Her face was pretty ordinary, but with the exception of her narrow hips, she had every indication of having a gorgeous body. "My old junk just stopped," she replied, wiping a tear from her cheek. "Did you call a tow truck or the highway department?" I asked innocently. "No, I don't have a cell phone. Besides, it wouldn't do any good because I don't have the money to pay for a tow truck, let alone fix my car," she replied, and her voice started to break. "Oh," I said, embarrassed. "Maybe I can get it running," I continued, not knowing where that came from since I'm about as mechanically astute as a baboon. "Thank you. My name is Kaylee, by the way," she said, her voice starting to come back to normal as she held out her hand. "Nice to meet you, Kaylee," I said as I shook her soft but strong hand. Her small children in the back seat of the car obviously didn't hide when people passed out because they immediately joined the conversation. "Hi, mister. I'm Jonah," her little boy, who looked to be about 6 or 7 years old, called out. "Are you going to fix our car?" I'm Faith, her probably 5-year-old blonde daughter, inserted. "Sometimes mommy lets me put on a little makeup." "Well, it's nice to meet you both," I smiled. "I really hope I can help." As I looked under the hood, pretending to know what I was doing, Jonah and Faith continued to banter, despite Kaylee's exhortations to let me think while I tried to fix their car. As non-mechanical as I was, it was obvious that there was a serious problem. It looked like a blown gearbox. "I'm sorry, Kaylee," I said, wiping the sweat from my forehead caused by the June sun. "I can't fix this, but you know what I can do." I lied. "I have a friend who owns a garage, and I know I can have him tow you in and diagnose the problem for free." "Thanks, Rob. That's really nice of you," Kaylee replied sincerely. "Our dad is in jail for fooling people at the bank," Faith squeaked. "Can you give us a ride in your cool car?" Jonah squeaked. "Kids, stop it already," Kaylee said, flinching and starting to blush. I just laughed at her hurt expression and said, "Hey, kids are kids, no problem." I picked up my cell phone and called the garage where I sometimes brought my car. I programmed the number into my Android. I stepped back so Kaylee couldn't hear my conversation since I'd only met the manager twice, and wasn't even sure I remembered his name, and I certainly couldn't ask him to tow Kaylee's car for free. But Kaylee was a damsel in distress, and her kids were incredibly sweet, so I had no problem paying for the towing and inspection. After being assured by the manager that he would charge me for his services and not say anything about it to Kaylee, I smiled broadly and told Kaylee the good news. "The tow truck will be here in 10 to 15 minutes. They will tow your car and diagnose the problem for free." She looked relieved and worried at the same time. The entire time until the truck arrived, I chatted with Kaylee's kids. I tried to get as much information out of them as I could, while Kaylee tried to keep them from revealing all the family secrets. It had been more than 20 years since my son and daughter were little, and I enjoyed the interaction immensely. However, there was a problem. The more I looked at Kaylee, the sexier she looked. Any heterosexual man knows that there are women who are ultra-sexy, although it's hard to pinpoint exactly why. Kaylee was one of 2 or 3 women I had met in my life who fell into that category. As I said earlier, with the exception of her thin thighs, she had a stunning body and a fairly ordinary face with excessive makeup. However, she had intangible qualities that were just off the charts. The way she moved her legs and arms, the way she flicked strands of hair back from her face, the way she smiled, the way she laughed. She intoxicated me. Just before Kaylee must have noticed me staring at her, thankfully a tow truck arrived. The driver dutifully began loading Kaylee's car while I led the kids to my car to take them and Kaylee to the garage. I had to put on my round mirrored sunglasses as Kaylee arched up in the front seat, exposing more of her thighs, which I now determined were muscular, though skinny, and a bit of cleavage. Her breasts were somewhere between large and immense. We chatted some more amicably as we followed the tow truck into the garage, and after first stopping by the manager's office to give him my credit card to assure him that Kaylee wouldn't be billed or notified of the arrangement, I sent her off to talk to him. While Kaylee was talking to the manager, I continued to pry information out of her children. Anyone who has dealt with children between the ages of 5 and 10 knows that while their perspective on things may be odd, they don't lie. And as long as they don't view you as a stranger, they are eager to answer all questions, even if their parents have forbidden them to do so. From the kids, filtering out some things that were obviously misconceptions on their part, I learned their father actually went to jail right after Christmas because he had defrauded bank officials, as well as many members of the public. They visited him about once a month. Their mom cried a lot because she couldn't buy them what they wanted. Santa Claus was so busy that he didn't have time to give each of them more than one gift for Christmas, and that they didn't like living in the apartment complex they lived in because it didn't have swings like their old house and had some weird neighbors. After talking to the garage manager for 10 or 15 minutes, Kaylee went back. The manager was very nice, but not particularly reassuring about what might be wrong, she told me. He said he would know what the problem was by the end of tomorrow and would call with an estimate then. "Thank you so much for your help, Rob." "My pleasure," I replied. "I really liked your kids. They are adorable and full of life." "That's a nice way of saying they are challenging," she laughed. "Yeah, I'd be happy to give you a ride to wherever you want to go," I offered. "Well, we were going to the grocery store, but you can just take us home," Kaylee replied. "Let me make one call," I said, "to check something out. And if there's no problem, I can take you to the store and then home." And I could tell Kaylee was anxious, but before she could respond, her kids intervened. Jonah watched our conversation intently and squeaked, "Hey, cool Faith, we're going to go to the store with Mr. Rob and take a ride in his neat car." Faith giggled and clapped her hands together. "I guess I don't have a choice if I don't want to riot," Kaylee grinned. I called the company I was going to visit and canceled my meeting with them. I was a potential investor and they were obviously disappointed, but I assured them I still wanted to meet and do the deal and rescheduled it for the next day. Jonah begged his mom to sit in the front seat as we drove to the store, so I deactivated the passenger side airbag. Faith was too small to get out of the car seat, so she stayed in the back, much to her great disappointment. John had dozens of questions he peppered me with about my car, an all-electric Tesla, and not the car I drove into the garage. It was my Ferrari. And in between answering them, I pretended to ask Faith how to get to the store, which she happily did, and most of them were correct, even though she had trouble distinguishing right from left. The 4 of us went shopping. The kids asked for common items that responsible parents wouldn't buy, and I helped Kaylee explain to them why they really shouldn't buy them. When it came time to pay, I noticed that Kaylee was nervous. I noticed the food stamps in her purse, and to avoid embarrassing her, I volunteered to take the kids outside and wait for her to pay before helping her with the groceries. She was relieved and readily agreed to my offer. Kaylee declined my offer to help carry the groceries from my car to her second-floor apartment. Again, I'm sure it was out of embarrassment, and I didn't insist. I did, however, give her my phone number and asked her to call me if she needed a ride anywhere until her car was fixed. Jonah high-fived me before carrying a bag of groceries for his mom. and Faith gave me a big hug when I put her car seat down at the end of the driveway to their apartment. Kaylee gave me an adorable smile and a sincere thank you. As I drove away, several things became clear to me. The apartment complex where Kaylee lived was not suitable for an attractive young woman, let alone young children. I was amazed at how sexy Kaylee was, and how much fun her children were. I was embarrassed by my physical and emotional reaction to a man 25 years younger than me. I would help her with the car without her knowledge, but I wouldn't try to contact her unless she called me. If she did call, I would do my best to make the relationship work. I talked to the garage manager again and convinced him to call me before calling Kaylee as soon as he found out what it would cost to repair her car. He did call around 4 p.m. the day after I met Kaylee and told me that it needed a new transmission and belts, but otherwise it was in decent condition considering its age. He went on to say that he could get a refurbished gearbox if Kaylee could wait a week, which would cut the cost in half. I asked him to give Kaylee an estimate of $99 to get it fixed if she waited a week, otherwise it would be $500, and I would pay the rest on top of the $99. I knew this increased the likelihood that Kaylee would call. I was thrilled when Kaylee called me the next day. "Hey Rob, it's Kaylee." "Hi Kaylee, have you heard about your car yet?" "Yes. The good news is that it will only cost $99 and I can pay it off when I get my next welfare check. But it's going to take a week, and I have to take the kids to their pediatrician tomorrow, and I really can't reschedule because it's so hard to get an appointment with Medicaid. Did you really mean it when you said you could help?" "Absolutely. What time do you need me? Could you pick us up at 10 o'clock in the morning?" Sure. How long do you think that'll take?" "It could take 2 hours. You could leave and I could try to find another way home." "I'll have a decision tomorrow." "See you at 10 o'clock, Kaylee." "Thanks, Rob. My solution was to buy her a 50 prepaid disposable cell phone so she could call me when they were done. Because as much as I love her and her kids, there was no way I was going to wait in a doctor's office for 2 hours. She was very pleased with my gift. She knew how to work with it since she had one before her husband was sent to jail and her finances collapsed. So I picked her up when they were done. I invited her and the kids over for dinner, which they left her no choice but to accept. For the next few weeks, I tried to take my time with Kaylee, always involving her kids in various activities. They especially enjoyed the 2 days they spent at my lake house, tubing, kayaking, and otherwise having a great time. Although my impulse was restrained, I did do one provocative thing. Kaylee didn't have a swimsuit, so I bought her a bikini. I apologized fervently when she put it on, as it left no room for imagination, telling her that it was what the saleswoman recommended. She guffawed as I had also bought her a mask. But I have to say that in a bikini, she could arouse a dead man. About 4 weeks after I met Kaylee, I drove to her house to take her and the kids for another day at the lake. Since she didn't seem to want me to come to her house as usual, I called both her landline and the disposable cell phone I had given her when I went outside. Neither of them were answered. This worried me, so I went to her apartment on the 2nd floor. Standing outside the door, I heard 2 men yelling, and what they were yelling about alarmed me. I banged on the door as hard as I could, yelling, "Kaylee, open up. It's time to leave." I heard the man whisper something to Kaylee, and then she spoke in an interrupted voice. "I'm sorry, Rob. Our plans have changed, and we can't go with you tonight. I'll call you tomorrow." "Hell no, Kaylee. I heard men's voices yelling at you. If someone doesn't open this door in 15 seconds, I'm calling 911. Shortly after, that slimy-looking guy with a gun behind his belt opened the door and said, "You're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Get out." "Actually, asshole, you're the one leaving," I blurted back, keeping one hand on the phone and the other at the ready in case he went for a gun. "Kaylee is my grandniece, and I run 2 legitimate Jimmy Parker businesses. You've heard of him, haven't you, shit for brains? Jimmy Parker was a criminal mastermind in the nearest big city, about 100 kilometers from here. Granted, I didn't actually run 2 of his businesses, but I knew him from a charity board he was trying to use to improve his image, and he knew who I was." Slug's face turned ashy gray when I said that. Not giving his brain mountains time to think, I quickly continued, "I've got Jimmy on speed dial, and as soon as I hit that button, you're done. Now I'm going in and you're going out." I quickly walked past him. I was glad to see that the kids weren't in the main room and that the bedroom door was probably closed. The second guy was even thinner than the first. As they started to walk away with angry expressions on their faces, cursing to themselves, I saw the bruise on Kaylee's face and the tears in her eyes. I picked up a bottle of wine that was on the counter, hit the second guy in the head with it, and then hit the first guy in the nose with it, obviously shattering it. I grabbed the barrel of his gun as he grabbed the handle and spun him around, breaking his thumb and making him cry out in pain. "You broke my goddamn nose and thumb, motherfucker." The first slug kept moaning as he lay on the floor in pain. The second guy was unsteady but not unconscious. I turned him over and found no weapon on him. Then I carried him out the door and threw him down the stairs. Then I put the gun to the first guy's mouth and said, "If you or any of your slimy accomplices even look at Kaylee or her kids one more time, I guarantee Jimmy will order you killed." "Got it." Now terrified, the first guy nodded. I took the gun out of his mouth and said, "Now get out." As I jerked him to his feet, pushed him out the door, and closed it behind him. There was both horror and relief on Kaylee's face. She started sobbing and came over to me and hugged me, crying on my shoulder. I put the gun on the nightstand. The bedroom door opened and both children peeked out from behind it. Their eyes were wide open, and there were tears in them too. "It's okay, kids, it's okay," I said. They ran up to me and grabbed my legs. When everyone had calmed down, I said to Kaylee, "You need to pack for yourself and the kids and stay with me for the next couple days. I have no idea what these guys are going to do, and you don't want to be around if they come back." I met no resistance. They packed up quickly and Kaylee asked me to take the kids in my car, and she followed me. Once we got to my house, I convinced her that we needed to call the police. 2 police officers came to my house and took statements from both of us. One of us was playing with the kids at the dock while the other gave his statement. I handed the gun to the police officers and told them they could find my fingerprints and the owner's fingerprints on it. Kaylee knew the name of one of the guys, and by checking the fingerprints on the gun, they were able to find the other guy. By bedtime, the kids seemed almost back to normal. Kaylee didn't. She felt the need to tell me that the guys had threatened her kids if she didn't work for them as a prostitute. This I had already realized from what I heard outside the door. I assured her that I would do everything in my power to make sure they never bothered her again. After drinking almost a bottle of wine and being completely emotionally drained, Kaylee seemed to finally relax. I helped her move into the second guest bedroom while her kids slept in the first, and then went to sleep in the master bedroom myself. Early the next morning, it couldn't have been later than 5:30, I woke up to someone stroking my shoulder. It was Kaylee, naked, with the most amazing body I had ever seen. "Kaylee, what?" was all I had time to utter before she kissed me and then whispered, "You helped me, and now I'm going to help you. Enjoy it." It was so beyond my experience that I have no words to describe it. I began to mumble, causing a wide smile to spread across Kaylee's face. Not exaggerating in the slightest, I continued to mutter as I stroked her breasts at her sides. It was so much better than any other sex I've had in my life, and it was a different class. "The only 2 things I've been truly exceptional at in my life," she replied in a happy, melodic voice, "are being a mother and having fun." "I know you're a fantastic mother, and if this was an example of you having sex, truer words have never been spoken," I moaned. "You're great too, and I needed it. This is the first sex I've had since my husband went to prison." As I made Kaylee and the kids breakfast, the smiles on her and my faces never left. The kids enjoyed their night out, and I promised to take them to an amusement park, hoping to completely erase yesterday's trauma from my mind. After a long, fun day of riding roller coasters and eating hot dogs, Kaylee and I put the kids to bed, and then I told her we needed to talk. "Kaylee, as you have no doubt realized by now, I really truly care about you and I love your kids." She smiled broadly. "I am concerned about what happened in your apartment. I'm concerned that you and your kids are living there, and I'm concerned that you don't have the means to continue being a supermom. I would like you and the kids to move in here with me." In response to Kaylee's half-sly, half-puzzled look, I quickly added, "But I'm not asking you to sleep with me until we get your husband's approval." That seemed to really puzzle her. "What?" she asked. "I'm not going to break up your marriage or take your husband's place as the father of your children. The breakup of my marriage was very painful for me. But I hope I can get your husband's approval, just to ease my conscience, since there is nothing in life I would like more than to sleep with you every night. That is, if you agree." Since she was obviously going over everything in her head, I didn't give her time to speak again. "But even if we never have sex again, I invite you and the kids to come live with me." After a long pause, I finally let Kaylee speak. "Rob, it's unrealistic for us to live in the same house for more than a few days and not have sex. I really like you, and I had as much fun this morning as you did. That's impossible. I interrupted, followed quickly by, "I'm sorry, please continue." "I know that if we live here, my children will have a much better life, that's crystal clear, and I would be a terrible mother if I didn't try to give them the best. But even though my husband is a cheater, and sometimes a complete asshole, I agree with you that we need his approval." "When can I see him?" I asked enthusiastically. "Visiting hours are this Saturday, and I was planning on taking the kids there. We can talk to him first, then you and I together. Stay here until then, Kaylee," I pleaded. "No sex." With those words, Kaylee stood up, walked over to me, wrapped her arms around my neck, gave me the most passionate kiss of my life, and then said, "We'll stay, but you need to lock me in my room for the night, or I can't guarantee this morning won't happen again." Deal. The 3 days until Saturday seemed to stretch on for a month. I was completely consumed with the thought of fucking Kaylee again, but I wanted it to be as mature as possible under the circumstances, so I was just suffering. I had one unfinished business to take care of before we visited the prison. I called Jimmy Parker, told him that the 2 guys who had molested my grandniece, as I called Kaylee, had been released on bail, and told him that I would make a $20,000 contribution in his name to the charitable foundation of the board of directors we sat on together in, if he would get a couple of his friends to instill in them the need to never go near Kaylee or her children again. Considering that a $20,000 contribution to the charity would reinforce the legitimate image he was trying hard to build, Jimmy was happy to help. The very next day he called me back and assured me that the 2 thugs or any of their friends would never bother her again. I made a contribution the same day. Early Saturday morning we drove 2 hours to the jail to visit Kaylee's husband. For the first hour the kids slept in the car. His name was Jack, and Kaylee told me and continued to tell me along the way as much about him and their relationship as she thought I needed to know. After Kaylee and the kids met with Jack for an hour, they left and I went in to see him. I hadn't seen any pictures of him and was surprised by his appearance. He was very good looking, but shorter in stature and thinner than I had imagined. When he started talking, I could tell by his perky manner that he must be a good con man. "So you're Uncle Rob," he said, half friendly, half skeptical as we shook hands. "You're bigger, more muscular, and look younger than I imagined. I'm not sure I like that." "Well, it came in handy when 2 thugs tried to force Kaylee into prostitution," I said with a serious look, something Kaylee had already told him about in a previous phone conversation. After some small talk, including how wonderful his children were and what a great mother Kaylee was, I cut to the chase. "Listen, Jack, I know you're going to be here for at least another 5 years, maybe as long as 10. Your family is suffering financially after just the first 5 months of your incarceration, and things are likely to get worse. I want to take care of them, but only with your approval." "What do you mean, take care of them?" "I'll take care of your children's needs, send them to a good school, and make sure no one else bothers Kaylee. But you're astute enough to realize that if they live with me, I'll sleep with Kaylee. That's why I'm straight with you about everything." "Have you slept with her yet?" he asked. "No," I lied, following Kaylee's advice. As difficult as it would be, considering what an absolutely sexy, sweet, and kind woman she is, I don't like the thought of someone else screwing her. "Do you really think a beautiful young woman can be celibate for 10 years while you're here? She's already being molested all the time. I've seen it with my own eyes. I could tell it made an impression on him. Would you rather a mature, rich guy like me have her taken care of her? Or would you rather some young stud have her and possibly abuse her or the kids? You're probably right, Rob. You know I'm right. Do you know she's the best whore in the world?" "I sure don't know, but I can easily believe she might be." "Well, once you sleep with her, you'll do everything you can to keep her and get me out of your sight. I just want to borrow her, not steal her like some young stud might. However, to put your mind at ease, I have a suggestion," I said. "I'm listening," Jack replied. "If she divorces you for any reason, whether I had anything to do with it or not, while you're in custody, I'll pay you $100,000. We'll sign a contract to that effect. In addition, I'll put enough money into a trust fund that you and she will jointly manage so that both of your children will graduate from college, regardless of what happens to me." "Kaylee and I never finished high school and you're going to send our kids to college?" he blurted out. "Yes," I replied. Jack's eyes widened for a few seconds. Obviously, I'd made an offer he hadn't expected, but then he pulled himself together and started negotiating as I'd intended. "That's a good start, Rob. But once you find out that Kaylee is the best sex in the world, you'll realize it's not enough. I want $100,000 no matter what, and $250,000 if she divorces me." We negotiated for the next 15 minutes. I knew I would eventually agree to everything, but he didn't know that, and I wouldn't get rich without being a tough negotiator. In the end, we shook hands and made a deal. I would put $25,000 into an account so he could use it however he wanted. Even while in jail, I'd have sex with Kaylee, and if it was the best sex I'd ever had in my life, I'd pay him $175,000 if she ever divorced him while he was in prison, or even afterward. If it wasn't the best sex I've ever had in my life, I'd pay him $75,000. Of course, college funds were also part of the deal, something I was going to do regardless of whether he agreed to anything. You know Kaylee is going to have to tell you that she wants to have sex with me and hear directly from you that you're okay with that, I said. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't tell her about the best sex ever. Deal? No problem, Jack replied, smiling. Send her back here alone, and in 20 minutes send the kids back here too. When we got out of jail, we were all as happy as could be. The children were happy because they saw their father, and he told them he didn't mind them living in my house until he got out, as long as they didn't mind. They applauded so loudly that the guard had to quiet them down. Kaylee was happy because she and the kids would be taken care of, and she would be my borrowed wife so she could sleep with me without cheating on her husband. I was happy because I really enjoyed John and Faith's company, and because Kaylee was, as far as I could tell, the hottest woman on the planet. Despite my plea not to, Jack told Kaylee about the prize if she was my best sex ever. You want me to save you $100,000 just by doing all the necessary steps? She slyly asked that night, nibbling her thumb. I already know you're the best sex in the world, and I have no intention of cheating Jack, so I'd love to repeat our first meeting. She smiled slyly, took me to bed, and totally knocked me half out. By the next morning, my whole body was aching, the best feeling of physical exhaustion I had ever experienced in my life. Since Jack couldn't take phone calls from anyone but his lawyer, except for certain hours once a week, I asked his lawyer to call him and get me. I told him he was absolutely right about Kaylee, instructed his attorney to prepare the necessary paperwork at my expense, and heartily agreed with him when he ended the call. You're just a lucky bastard, Rob. Truer words have never been spoken, I replied sincerely. It had been over 2 years since I'd made the deal with Jack. My life was better than ever, and with the exception of writing this story, I never even thought about my ex-wife. Kaylee's kids are doing great in school and enjoy playing soccer and basketball in recreational leagues. When my children come to visit, they treat Jonah and Faith like their younger siblings. Both of my kids are fine with me living with someone else's wife, but sometimes I get jealous of the looks my son throws at Kaylee. Ha, he's no different than any other man. Kaylee loves that she doesn't have to worry about where she's going to eat next, and she's thrilled that she doesn't get paid by Social Security and Medicaid. She now gives back to the community by doing charity work when the kids are in school. Kaylee now wears her beautiful shoulder-length blonde hair and wears very little makeup. This makes her face look almost as amazing as her body. More importantly, Kaylee is not just a sex goddess, but a kind, caring, wonderful woman and a truly special mom. I am madly in love with her, even though I try not to admit it to her. I know she probably loves me too, not only because I do a great job with her kids, but also because she enjoys spending non-sexual one-on-one time with me and seems to enjoy it almost as much as I do. And I really don't know what will happen when Jack gets out in about 3 to 8 years and wants his wife back. All I do know is that I no longer dream of sleeping with Kate Upton, as I have something better to do in real life.